wonderful guests, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. It is my pleasure to welcome all of you today for what promise to be an enriching evening where we celebrate, recognize, and learn from two women who have defied the odds in fighting gendered barriers in reaching professional heights. I will have Alia Fateh introduce our two speakers in just a moment.
Thank you. I will stand. Sorry. Can you all hear me? Because I've got a mic on. Yes? All good. So my husband says, Alia ki tu ek hi volume hai, anyway, which is loud. Okay, so thank you all for coming tonight. I know it's a big ask on a Wednesday midweek to get across town and everything, and we really do appreciate your support. So I'm here to welcome you on behalf of the British Pakistan Foundation to this talk that we are having on Women Building Britain, Trouble in the Pipeline. I didn't think there was, but I stand before you as hopefully someone who has been hitting that pipeline quite hard recently anyway. I'd like to introduce our guest speakers for this evening. Carol Rosati, Global Head of Inspire and Director of Harvey Nash. Carol is the founder of the global board network Inspire, which connects over 4,000 senior businesswomen worldwide. As Inspire has developed over the last 6 years, she has gained a unique insight into the challenges faced by both the women and the organizations who wish to attract and retain them. She uses this knowledge to advise multinational blue-chip clients on their diversity development programs. And Kamal Hoti, Head of Responsible Business Projects, Lloyds Banking Group. Kamal has worked for Lloyds for over 34 years across various divisions and is the architect behind the Asian Strategy, where she sponsored over 30 awards such as the Asian Women of Achievement and the Asian Jewel Awards, and helped raise the profile of inspirational Asian achievers, as well as educating her colleagues on cultural differences, resulting in an improvement in access to finance, as well as the development of new products. So I would like to introduce Carol as our first speaker of the evening.
Hello, everybody. I'm not going to stand up because I always feel as if I'm towering above everybody, so I'd rather just sit and chat to you. As you've just heard, I'm the founder of Inspire, which is now nearly 7 years old, and I'm a very lucky girl because I get to do it every day and be inspired by so many of the amazing women that I've actually met over the years. And I get to do it every day, as I said. Have I said that already? I have, haven't I? And basically what I've done is it started very much as a networking event twice a year. And originally I found 250 women to reach out to. That's all I could find in the whole of the UK. Now, of course, as you said, it's actually approaching nearly 5,000 now, so I'm getting there. But what I've actually done is it's more than just a network now, and it's more than just a 2-event-a-year job, because certainly, although I have spring and autumn, I go all over the place, all over the world, in fact, with events for different countries, and in fact going to Vietnam for our launch event in October. But one of the side effects, and one of the most joyous side effects for me, is it's actually altered the very DNA of Harvey Nash as a recruitment firm. And now the consultants are more than happy to actually take me out to meetings with their clients to talk about how they can actually improve diversity in their workforce, not just gender, but diversity in the broadest sense, which is actually very, very important to me. When I actually go and see them, I talk to them quite often about the diversity triangle, and it's a very passionate thing for me because I truly believe that there are 3 sides to the story. There's the search firms, there's the businesses, and there's the women themselves. And it's equally important that we all work together to actually improve diversity as a whole. Again, not just gender, but gender is something that I'm quite passionate about, as you probably gathered. So firstly, the search firms. When I founded Inspire 7 years ago, gender certainly really wasn't a hot topic. And as I said, I could find 250 women, that was all there was. Now, of course, post-Davis Review in 2011, we've got enormous media coverage, and it is a real opportunity for us to actually improve gender diversity, certainly. But there is a huge amount to do. It's the tip of the iceberg. We're doing incredibly well at the FTSE 100. The FTSE 250 have woken up and smelt the coffee, hopefully. But certainly in terms of the pipeline, I'm really sorry, but it is a massive, massive problem and something that we really, really need to work on. And I think that one of the things that I find is that I go to lots of meetings now with different search firms, and it's at least higher on their agenda. But it's not high enough, and we need to work really, really hard at improving the number or the balance of shortlists. And for that, I am talking about gender as a whole. One of the things that I am, as I said, very, very proud of is Inspire not only inspires me, but inspires consultants within Harvey Nash to actually create different networks, such as Women in Technology, for their candidate communities. And I am really, really pleased to have Peter with me this evening, who's sitting at the back, because he's created something called Engage, which is actually an inclusive network that we're launching for business people from all cultural backgrounds to come together to improve diversity. And it's something that I'm really, really keen to talk about. So obviously afterwards, if you want to come and talk to me, or Peter particularly, then please do talk to us later. So the second bit of the triangle is the businesses themselves. And this is the joyful bit for me, because I actually get to go in and talk to them about what they're actually doing. And for the last 9 months, I've been recording a podcast series with business leaders to talk to them about what they actually are doing, rather than just pontificating about the fact, oh yes, we really ought to have more women on our shortlist. And it's been really, really interesting, and I'm just going to share a couple of those with you. The first one was the chairman of PwC. And when he became chairman, he actually, the partner to female to male ratio was pretty dire. It was about, at least in double figures, but not much over female versus male. Now it's doing really, really well, and they're nearly up to 20%, which you might think is not good, but in terms of pace, that's incredible. What they've actually done, he talks about leveling the playing field, and he trains everybody who recruits to recruit differently, to actually engage differently and communicate differently, because what he actually realised is that men and women do communicate differently, which I'll come on to later. But one of the things he does do, which I think is really interesting, is he actually gets the rules of engagement read out prior to every single interview, so that everybody judges every applicant the same way. And by that, I mean they actually ask the same questions, they actually listen to what the individual is saying. If they're struggling, they ask it a different way, so that individual can actually project themselves in the best way forward, which I think is an absolutely brilliant idea. The second one, which I love as a story, is that there's a chair of a law firm, and he said, well, we have unconscious bias training, and one of the main things is it's difficult to actually get people to have it, because of course the clue is in the title. They actually don't realise that they need it in the first place. And he told a lovely story of the example that he uses for himself, that he was sitting there one day having a chat to a female partner, and they were talking about a junior, very, very good girl that was coming up through the ranks, but he said it's such a shame that she doesn't want to become partner. And the female partner turned around to him and said, well, that's ridiculous. That couldn't be further from the truth. Actually, she really does want to be a partner. Well, why hasn't she told me? And it was a real light bulb moment for him, because he realised that the young lad that was coming through to talk to him on a daily basis, almost saying, I really want to be a partner, was at the same level, but was more likely to become a partner because he'd told him what his expectations were. It's a really valuable lesson. When it comes out, it's going to be coming out at the end of October. It will also be online on iTunes as well. So if you get a chance, they're only about 12 minutes long, so hopefully not too boring and not too much of me either. But do listen to them, because it's a whole variety of things that businesses have done, including the role of education, how we should actually reach out to school level right at the start to actually improve the pipeline, to actually measuring it. That is one of the most, nearly all of them that I interviewed said, we have to measure it, and we have to share best practice, and we have to measure success. And whatever that success is, build on it. So the third part of the equation is the most sensitive bit. It's the women themselves. I'm really lucky, because I get to speak to so many women through Inspire, so much so that I actually have recently qualified as a coach, because I was spending so much time doing it. I thought I really ought to get accreditation and get a qualification behind me to put my money where my mouth is. So I've just finished an assignment of 13,000 words. It nearly killed me, because I haven't done that since 1997, but we're nearly there. And really, the message that I would leave with you with today is that there is so much that we can do for ourselves. in terms of the fact is, it's still a male playing field. They own the playing field. And if we actually want to play on the playing field, we have to learn the rules of engagement. And I always say to audiences, I celebrate the fact you're a woman, embrace the fact that you're a woman, but we can still learn some techniques that we need to use. The main ones being, we need to communicate more directly. We need to celebrate our successes, and we need to tell people about them. We need to learn how to blow our trumpet very, very loud and not feel ashamed of it, apart from anything. We need to tell people what we want and not apologise for it, and then try and get it back after we've said it. And don't even get me started on the gender pay gap, because the financial disparity thing, I could go on all night for that, so I promise I won't. And lastly, most importantly, we need to be visible. One of the best things you can actually do for your career is to actually get a sponsor. And I don't mean a mentor, I mean a sponsor. Somebody who can actually open doors for you and actually talk to people about you and just blow your trumpet for you, as well as you blowing it. And that's what most men are very, very good at. And I really think that if you do all of those, then as a whole, we will get much further. And the one message that I heard recently at a conference, which I think is just so incredibly important, which I'll leave you with today, is we need to lift as we rise. Thank you.
And now we're going to hear from Kamal Hoti.
Right, thank you. First of all, thank you so much for the invitation, and I'm not sure if I'm as qualified as Carol in the world that she's working in, but certainly I'll try to share some experience of myself. And in Lloyds Bank, just last year, we committed that by 2020, 40% of our senior women will be, senior positions will be led by women. So it's a huge target for us, but I'm glad we've got it in there, and every year we now have to provide a proof point against that target, so at least it's one step forward. But what I want to do is actually just walk away from the stats and the official targets and challenges in the pipeline, but actually relate it to more ourselves in the Asian community. So what's our issues? So what's stopping us breaking those glass ceilings that Carol's been talking about? Like you, Carol, I mentor quite a few women, and a lot of them constantly ask me, what's success? How can you be successful? For me, that word actually is a bit like when you say beauty is in the eye of the beholder. So you might think you're beautiful, but somebody else might have a different opinion. So success for somebody might be in one place, might be about salary, it might be about position. For somebody else, it might be purely that I have a job that I can balance, I can look after my children at the same time. So I think it's very, very important as women, we really understand when you say you want to be successful, what does success actually mean for you? So you don't just get on the same bandwagon just because everybody else is on that same conveyor belt. Especially, I think, for the next generation, they think, right, they have to go to university, they have to have a career in the city, they have to do this, they have to do that. But actually, do they ever stop and think, what is it actually that they want? And how do they get there? So to have a real clear goal of really understanding yourself, I think for me is really, really important, and hopefully that might help. So for me, I've been in Lloyds, as you said, 35 years. For the first half of my career was totally different to my second half of my career. It's the second half of my career when I'm older and wiser and uglier that I think I managed to do what I want to do, which is actually have a role that I love. I want to actually do something, make a difference. So I don't want to leave a position that actually I've just become a number. So whatever job, so for me, it's not salary that drives me, and it's not the grade nor the title at the moment, but it's actually the project. So when I do something, I want to make a difference in my company that actually will have a footprint that goes forward. I'm so proud, like yourself, I started the Ethnic Minority Network nearly 15 years ago within Lloyds, because when I came into head office, all I could see was white, grey-haired men and hardly any women, let alone Asian women. So for me, that was important, and I think you have to really understand what inspires you to get out of bed, what do you want to do, and what do you want to leave behind you. But also for me, what's more important, and more important than my career, is my family life. So can I balance what I've been brought up to be? So, my mother brought me up, you've got to get married, you've got to be a good daughter-in-law, you've got to be a mother, and all of those things. And actually, that is more important to me. So trying to find something that actually allows me to balance what it is important to my life is actually key. So what I find is when I'm nurturing young girls and they have this fixation on having this career, and they are very successful, they're much more educated than I ever were, you know, going to universities, coming back. But then slowly what I've seen that mentoring and that coaching is slightly changing as their age develops, and they've lost sight of where their personal goals are. And all of a sudden, I think you and especially mothers will understand this when they're reaching their 35 years and 40 years and they're coming back and saying, Kamal, oh my God, I want to get married and I can't find a boy. You know, mum and dad are having a right go at me. So I think for our children, even for ourselves, making sure that we really have that balance, that you don't, you know, you can't have a career timeline and I want to do this and I want to become this CEO or in this position. But make sure that you have a line, you know, a line underneath that actually says, actually by this age, I'd love to get married. Do you want children? Or whatever that ambition might be, to make sure that they go both in harmony. Because trust me, you may be able to have it all, but somewhere along that line, you have to give up something, or you have to put something on the back burner. And so, you know, all the time, yeah. So either when you're a mother and you're pregnant or you have a child, is to make sure that you're in a position or you're working for somebody or you're working for an organization that totally respects women that are going to be, you know, you're having the married life, and you've got a child, and that you go back to an organization that will respect that. So that then you don't get bitter because, oh my God, I can't do the job because the job's so demanding. I can't be a mother because, you know, the demands at the home. So you make an informed choice. I want to be a mother. I'm going to go slowly reduce my life at work so I'm actually in a position I'm good at what I'm doing. So I think it's important that you balance and you make that informed choice. And then once your child or whenever that child is ready, and then you can actually escalate your life at work. One other thing I would say is not to judge your own timeline against somebody else. So Baroness Verma is sitting there and she's constantly hounding me, why aren't you this or why aren't you that or doing this? And I know actually I never went to university. I've got a baggage at home which I'll share you in a minute. But actually, and then I see somebody else who might be of my age and they're, you know, a much more senior position than I am, is actually everybody's got so many different experiences. You might have so many different responsibilities at home, different education work streams, different wealth, that you may come from different backgrounds. So why get bitter and compare yourself to somebody else who may have a different, you know, journey to yourself? So just be passionate about what you are, and believe in where you are going, and know that you're doing the best you can do. And sod what anybody else thinks about that. You know, you should be proud of where you are and actually believe in what you are, and stop comparing yourself to somebody else, especially from colleagues from different backgrounds to yourself. You can't compete, you know, on that same playing level. But actually, if you know where you're going, sometimes actually what you say, be proud of who you are, be proud of the skin that you're in. We can bring so much more to the corporate world. We know so much, we juggle so many different balls. So I think there are different ways of actually escalating yourself maybe down the line. So just bringing that back to myself, as I said, my parents didn't let me go to university. I came home one day, I was working in TSB as a cashier, and Dad and Mum, they were going to go and see a boy for me. 2 hours later, you know, you're going to get married in 3 months' time. I was 19, no picture, so I didn't even know who I was marrying. And there I met this guy, you know, married to the middle brother, to a family who were very, very nervous because the women didn't work. So they knew nothing about banking, and we're talking about in the 70s, by the way, where women didn't really have a career. And there was a threat that if you brought your Western culture home, you have to stop working. And I remember on my wedding night, and I'm not going to get dirty, by the way, but I remember on my wedding night, a very innocent 19-year-old, I thought my husband was going to start singing Gubby Gubby to me any minute. But instead, my accountant husband brings out this graphic 5-year plan and saying, right, where are we going to be in 5 years' time? Now, I'm not joking to you. I had a 3-hour lecture of how to behave, how to respect his family, what role I played in the family, and the words were, even if you have to act like a servant, that's what I expect you to do. Now, that's what I was brought up. It was fine, you know? And I smile about it now, but actually, to be honest, it was the best thing he ever did. 32 years later, we're still married, and we still do that. He still gets out that graph. And where are we going to be in 5 years' time? My son just got married 2 weeks ago. and they're coming back from their honeymoon, and it's like 5 years' time, like 35 years in banking, 40 years, am I thinking retiring? I'd love to be a grandmother. So I have a timeline that I can map to my children. My mother-in-law still lives with me. So I've got a huge challenge coming. I'm going to have 3 generations living in one house. So how am I going to cope? So, you know, at the end of the day, you have to actually map your own timeline and what makes you proud. And for me, I'm proud if my mum's looking down on me, bless her heart, she passed away. I've delivered what she wanted, which was look after my mother-in-law, be a dutiful daughter-in-law, and I hope I'm delivering to that. I'm proud of my children for what they've achieved. They lived in this culture. They're educated in Britain. They see themselves as British Asians and British, Indians, but they have this, they don't see themselves as any boundaries or challenges, but they're very, they joined their father's business, and they want to take it to another level. So they don't have any barriers, which I'm delighted about. But the fact that they're still living in this culture of ours, and they have that foundation of my mother-in-law there, providing that support, and a mother that actually now, my biggest sponsors are my children, my boys, who encourage me every day, Mum, go for it. Go and do this. You can achieve what you want. And what I'd love to do is be able to give that to my daughter-in-law and not be the Jekyll and Hyde that I had to live, which was, the Wonder Woman act of not the skimpy outfit that she did. I don't know if anybody remembered Wonder Woman. But it's changing into the salwar kameez at home with a sink tied to my breast. But so I think the women in the future, our next generation, have a huge opportunity that they can actually achieve whatever they want. But at the same time, I hope they can balance what they want really in their personal life as well and not lose sight of that. Thank you.
My name is Huma Beg, and I just want to take my hats off to comments from Kamal. Is it Kamal or?
Kamal, yeah.
I have heard women in Women Forum, where the main thing is how to rise up the ladder, especially in corporate functions. I've never heard a woman speak like you and recognize her second life that we have as a mother, as a daughter. And it is always put down because we, throughout, are expected to be like the men if we have to fight the war at that level, especially at corporate level. I have never heard anybody with your confidence talk about recognizing that other life and then balancing that out, which is fabulous because women do both of them. And I just want to ask you, how can we take that narrative and that second life that we do carry, where we are expecting children, where we have this 50% time at home, where we have to change the world at home as well, and get it branded as something which is really something that the future daughters will be striving for? That the corporate life will not be the black-suited, act-like-men life, but a life which recognizes and admires that. Can you give us any thoughts on that?
I think for me, personally, is I'm who I am. I don't want to change. I don't want to change my persona. I love my culture. And what I've tried to do is learn from that. So it was a key moment why I was being bypassed by promotion by all the men and everybody else is because my voice wasn't strong enough. I was being very feminine. That's what we're brought up to be by our culture, isn't it? And you bring that persona to work. But actually at the same time, when as though you're looking through a different lens than the men are, and you think, actually, I can balance so many balls. I'm doing all of this balancing act. And actually, I'm influencing my family at home. I'm influencing people at work. So there are so many skills I think we have, but we don't recognize them. So it's just be confident enough to bring those skills to the forefront. But I think the other thing it is about kind of what you said is actually educating the men around us. So because I was bypassed, it's because they thought, oh, she's very mild-spoken. She's never banged the table and said, I want promotion. Because there's me thinking, if I do a good job, just like my mum and dad, my boss will promote me. But actually, no, it doesn't work like that. You have to actually physically say it. Why aren't I being promoted? What do I need to get promoted? So I think for me, it's actually understanding what your own challenges are. And your colleagues, they don't do it deliberately. They just don't appreciate that you are different. And you might want to communicate in a different way. So I think the key thing is, yes, do a good job, get recognized for doing a good job, but it's also profiling, raising up your profile. And when I said, I wouldn't be doing what I've doing if I hadn't set up the Ethnic Minority Network and took the courage to speak in front of 400 colleagues. And in that room, there was somebody from the Race for Opportunity who said, oh, can you come and speak in front of our black tie dinner? Yeah, okay. I had no clue. Spoke there, and there was somebody from the government and said, can you come and help lead a task force for procurement because we're going to pitch for the 2012 Olympic Games in 15 years' time. Okay, I'll try. So I think it's raising your profile and putting yourself out there, and just because you're wearing a headscarf doesn't make you any lesser than somebody else who doesn't. It's just making your colleagues feel comfortable that you're okay, you can understand, and you're just as eager and hungry as they are.
Carol, do you have anything to add?
I totally agree with you, and I quite unlike me actually. When I before I joined Harvey Nash, they said, "Well, you're not on our radar," when they were looking for someone to join. I said, "Oh no, well that's because I live in Somerset. I have 2 young children. I can't work in London 5 days a week, but I can do 3, and I don't go on the tube. So you'd have to put me up somewhere so I could walk to work." It's the first time ever that I've actually been A, that bolshy, and B, my husband might disagree, but B, actually asked for what I wanted. And 8 years later, it has never, ever been an issue. But if I hadn't have asked at that point, I'd have never got the job. But you have to be, exactly to your point, you have to be so clear in your mind what is important to you, because my family's very important to me, what is acceptable, what isn't acceptable, and you have to communicate it.
I think one of the things that I picked up from what Kamal was saying is that if you are a woman and you want to be fulfilled by your career, as well as by your family life, and you want that to be a part of your life, you have to look at it as a marathon. It's not a sprint. And I think that's the difference with boys. I've seen the difference. I have 2 girls, my sister has 2 boys, and the difference is I see it, the pressure that is on them as boys amongst boys, and how they push each other. Whereas I chose in my career I've only ever worked, really, the bulk of my time has been spent working with women and working in an office. I worked for Condé Nast, I worked in magazines where when I joined, it was 90% women, and the diversity was actually the reverse. So when I left, we were very proud that we had now got, we were now 60-40, that we had some men. In my new job, my last job, there were no men at all. And I work in fashion, so you can but we have one in my office now. He's a pattern cutter, and he's 3 days a week. But that's it. It's all women all the time. So I don't see it in that way. But I do think I was very lucky to be at a place like Condé Nast, which was incredibly supportive of you if you wanted to go off and have babies. So for me, getting married and having children wasn't an issue, because I'd seen all my bosses get married, have babies, come back. And even when I had my first child, I remember my managing director at my first meeting back, he just went, "Ollie, I don't care if you have 6 children. Just keep coming back. Just keep coming back, because we miss you." And we are proud of the fact that you come back. I think that's also it. I think you have to, also be understanding also of your employer. I'm now sitting on the top and looking at, an entire female workforce and thinking, so what are we putting in the budget for maternity next year?
When I told my employer, who was one of the big 4, that I was pregnant for the first time, he didn't talk to me for 3 months.
Yeah, and mine threw a party. He was, "When can you tell everyone?" And I was like, "Shh." I mean, that's
The difference.
That's the difference. So choose your environment, because I'll tell you this, all my girlfriends who went into banking at the same time as I went into magazines, they're all not working now and kicking themselves because it was made too hard for them to come back. So I do acknowledge that I was very lucky. I wasn't earning the big bucks like they were, but slow and steady won the race, because I'm sitting now managing director of a big fashion company, and they're all wishing that they could get back on the carousel. And that is something I would say, be very careful if you step off. It is very hard to go back on, because it doesn't stop for you.
Arif Zaman from the Commonwealth Business Women's Network, one of the 3 directors. We did a report last year, which we took to looking at experiences across the Commonwealth, but in particular from Britain, Pakistan, but also other Commonwealth countries, looking at women on boards and in senior levels of decision making. And 2 or 3 key messages came out of this, which I just want to pose by way of a question. One of them, and it was just touched upon a moment ago, the importance of sponsorship as opposed to mentoring. I mean, you talked about specifically sponsorship, by other women, but I think there is certainly, it was very interesting, we had 30 ministers of women from across the Commonwealth last June in a room, and this is one of the things that really got them thinking around the importance of sponsorship. The other question is around visibility, media visibility, and one of our recommendations in this report, which is freely available, which we did with the ACCA, was to say, well, media visibility helps. We just did with ASIF's help, the British Pakistan Foundation, we did these Commonwealth Women Entrepreneur of the Year Awards. Part of the thinking behind that was to, for the first time after 65 years, give media visibility to these amazing women across the Commonwealth. So I think the importance of media visibility. But the third thing, and this is why, Carol, I'm very pleased to see that you're here, is if we don't get these people in the room, the headhunters, it's a waste of time. And one of the things that we are now doing is we're working with the Association of Executive Search Consultants, which is the global professional body for Carol's organization and many others, to crack that number. And you know what the number is? It's 80,000. That's the number of people on the Headhunters Global Database. How many women? 8,000. How many diverse women? Much smaller than that. So I think there are big opportunities about working with headhunters, looking at sponsorship, and around looking at the visibility. And I just want to draw upon your experiences to see if you can connect to any of those.
Carol, do you want to?
I think there are, especially, well, can I just draw on social media? So LinkedIn, for example. I'm on LinkedIn. Have I really actively used it? No, because I don't have time. But yet, I've got so many people wanting to be linked into me. I think there are ways of actually raising your profile outside of your organization. But I think it comes back down to if you're actively wanting to be approached by headhunters, you have to make yourself known that you're available and that you're keen. And I think by going to coaches or people like yourself and actually laying it out there, and I think there's no harm in actually sending your CV out. You can only say no. So I actually encourage all my people that report directly to me is actually say, go for interviews, because it's a great way of learning from yourself and just being ready for the next step. So I think we have to be visibly and physically actually demonstrating that I'm keen. And if you don't do that, nobody will know you.
It's an interesting point. I mean, I having done Inspire, I think Harvey Nash is a very different place now than what it was 6 or 7 years ago. And as I said earlier, it's had a fundamental impact on the DNA of the business as a whole. And I'm very proud of that, and I'm very proud of them, because they really, really do get it. They embrace diversity, and particularly gender, because I'm rabbiting on about it all the time. I think that there's an awful long way to go in the search business as a whole, search sector as a whole. And some of them have only just started. Some of them are really only just aware that there's even a problem of having all male shortlists, which is abhorrent to me personally, but there you go. And I think that that particular issue does and has been raised in terms of the new enhanced code that's coming out in a couple of weeks' time. Though interestingly, and I shan't go on my hobby horse, but interestingly, the code specifies that the firms that will get the kite mark are the ones that actually recruit women into the FTSE 350 and only. And by the very nature of that, well, the FTSE 350, the chairman will only go to the largest search firms, because obviously they want their next chair role as well. So there is a problem, there's a cartel in effect. So there is a secondary kite mark for those firms who actually do the work in terms of actually create the opportunities, coach the women, actually bring the women forward, regardless of ethnicity, so that we do actually improve the candidate pool. To me personally, that's actually the more important kite mark, because it means that we're actually really, really impacting on the future of the pipeline.
From a sponsorship point of view, I would say, yes, it is important to have sponsors. I think it's different from having a mentor. I think and I think sometimes when people come up, I have a lot of people who do come up to me at events and they'll say, I would really like it if you could mentor me. And I find myself somewhat, on the back foot because but I don't know, how could you want me to mentor you if you don't know me, really know me? And I think that within my organization, I should be watching the women that are around me and seeing where they're falling behind and allowing them to sort of have a chance to step up their game. I've stepped into a new role in the last month, and one of the things, I've gone from something which was quite small to something which is much bigger, which is, I'm answerable to a board and private equity and all of that kind of stuff. And the one thing they said to me is, how will you deal with, those people who don't want to get on board with where you want to take the company? And I said, I have to lead by example. So if everybody sees the way I work and gets excited by that and wants to be on that bus, they'll get on. If they don't, they won't. And eventually they'll find another job or they'll move on or whatever. And sometimes the most difficult thing that you can say to somebody within your organization is, maybe this isn't the right fit for you. It doesn't mean that you're not great at what you're doing or whatever, but the way this company wants to go and where we want to vibrate at a certain level, if you're not willing to get on board with that, maybe it's better that we look together to find you something which is a better fit. And my sponsors have both been men all the way through my career. So I have not seen women at a senior level pull people up in a lot of ways. It is still, and I think maybe that's from the publishing fashion thing where it is still that. I mean, the Devil Wears Prada, it wasn't really fiction. I mean, it was based on something. And I do believe in Madeleine Albright's, there is a special place in hell for women who don't help other women in the workplace. And so one thing that I think we're past that. I would like to hope that we are past that. The big shoulder pads and the meanness and I want to be queen bee and make sure no one else comes up. I think it's done, and I don't think we should ever think about encouraging that ever again. But yeah, just by chance, both my biggest sponsors have been men. Thank you. I'd like to thank Carol and Kamal for being here this evening and for their inspiring and aspirational speeches tonight. And thank you to all of you for taking time out of your busy lives as well to come and support BPF and the Women's Initiative.
Today we had a very successful event talking about how we, women of Pakistani origin, are able to build Britain. I think the three very strong messages that came across was we need to have our voice heard if we want to be in management, if we want to be in senior management. Those who are in senior management need to pull those who are in middle management up. We don't need to have the view that we're up here on senior management and all the others in the lowly positions should not come and compete with us. I think we should encourage them to come up. And I think the last major point is, which is linked to this, is we need to sponsor women who are in the pipeline, who need to be encouraged, who need to be supported in trying to identify careers that they may be in or in careers that they may want to go into. So I think these are the three main points from today's event.
In summary, we are here to hear their voice, what they want from the Pakistani community, if they want any support from the UK government. So this forum will help young Pakistani professionals to sit down on one platform and talk about issues they're having in the Britain and solve them through different organizations like BPF. Thank you.
If there is a room full of women who are working and who are oozing out their passion and their life experience, it's a brilliant opportunity to learn. It also reinforces a lot of our ideas of how women should be in the working work field, in corporate sector. But the moment you are buzzing with many of them, you recognize that you have to create your own version of what a woman, a successful woman should be. And then you see a lot of other women reinforcing that, which is brilliant. But you also recognize, and that's something that I've just felt in this room today, that there is a great demand for advice, for, you know, for the nutshell of good experience. So I have decided after this to create a little program, a video of successful women clips and their advice on how to move up the ladder, not just in corporate affairs, or finding your happiness in your workforce. So this has worked for me as well, and I love being in places like that. It just energizes you, and hearing other women say the same things that you feel deep down is something which is magical and should be done more of, and it energizes you again.